Hi, Brianna. So you are celiac, correct?
I am.
And when were you first diagnosed with celiac?
I was diagnosed 5 years ago, my senior year of high school. And it kind of caught me off guard because I was, getting really sick. I was feeling really nauseous. I stopped eating for about a month before I was diagnosed. And honestly, I'm really lucky because I was diagnosed a lot earlier than a lot of other people. The average time to be diagnosed is 6 to 10 years. And it was about a month after I started showing symptoms that I was diagnosed.
Wow. And what was the hardest lifestyle change or, food to give up or something that you found sort of the most difficult as a transition?
So I was in my senior year of high school, as I said, and I was about to go to college. And so the hardest thing was getting used to the new diet and then going somewhere where I had no control over anything. And the school that I went to, I had already chosen it before I was diagnosed, so it threw everything off. And they weren't really that helpful. They tried really hard, but it was a school of 26,000, and there's only so much they could do for me. And it was really difficult to kind of get my point across. And I talked to the dietitian, I talked to disability services, and it took a long time to figure out how to help me. So I finally ended up getting into the apartments there, and I got my own kitchen, and it was this huge improvement. My grades shot up, and I ended up graduating with really high GPA after doing really badly originally. So it was really difficult, but then it got so much better.
Well, congratulations.
It took me about 7 years to get diagnosed with my celiac, but I've had it for about 6 years now since the diagnosis. Probably 13 years since I've actually had it.
Wow. And what has been the hardest lifestyle change for you after being diagnosed?
I like to travel a lot, so I think I have a hard time having to, really look into ingredients and conveying in other languages. Gluten-free, the wheat, the barley, and the rye, but also just at home when I'm eating out. My family likes to eat out a lot, and you just have to be aware of every ingredient. You need to talk to people when you go to the restaurants, the managers, the servers, and you need to double check. I'm always reading ingredient labels and double checking to make sure, is this gluten-free or not?
And how do you find it? How is the response when you are asking these questions?
Most of the time people are receptive. There's a lot of people that don't know anything about gluten-free, and they think it's dairy-free or it's nut-free or it's something. There's a lot of confusion in the layperson, I'd say, which makes sense because it takes a lot of time to get up on reading labels and learning. It's a huge learning curve when you first are diagnosed with celiac, and people don't know unless they're diagnosed and they have a reason to know. So,
what is one thing that you would love for people to know about celiac?
It's real, and cross-contamination is real. It's not just gluten-free. When you go to a restaurant and they say the French fries are gluten-free, but they're fried in a shared fryer with onion rings or things that are breading, that it's a real issue, and it's not just being gluten-free. It's the cross-contamination is also an issue. So even if the hamburger buns are cooked on the same grill that the hamburger meat is cooked on, that's cross-contamination. So it's more than just being gluten-free. It's being aware of all sources of gluten and being able to address that.
I found out 4 years ago when I was 9 years old.
And at the time, what was the hardest lifestyle change for you to make? What was one food or something that was really difficult to give up?
I would say cake, because it was hard going to birthdays, and I would sometimes bring my own little cupcake to bring with me, but that's what I miss the most.
I was diagnosed when I was 3.
And what has been some of the things that you found a little bit difficult to go without, or are there any foods that you wish you could have?
A lot of the sweets I wish I could have.
Which ones in particular?
Donuts.
Donuts?
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing to say no to? Are there gluten-free donuts around?
Yes, they are.
And how do they taste?
Good.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I was diagnosed about 2 years ago. Have had years of problems though. It took about 4 years to actually figure out that I was a celiac.
And what was the thing that made you say, I need to really figure this out?
So I actually played volleyball in college, and I used to naturally just stay away from pasta, bread, everything. It just always made my stomach hurt. And then when I went to school to play volleyball, I had to eat the pregame meals with all of the pasta, bread, everything. I didn't have a choice. And after my first season, I came back home for winter break, and I couldn't get out of bed. I was so sick. I would sleep from 8 p.m. at night until 1 in the afternoon the next day. And my mom was furious. She was like, these doctors can't figure out what's wrong. And I had like bruises on my arms from all the IV needles because they did so many blood tests. Yeah.
And what was the hottest lifestyle change for you after being diagnosed as celiac?
For me personally, when I actually make my food, I have to have it cooked all in separate pans. I'm so sensitive that if something's cooked in the same pan or grill that has something with gluten on it, I'll still get sick. So when I go out to eat, it's really hard trying to find a place that actually does that and can accommodate that. And a lot of people, they don't realize how sensitive some people can be. Because there's some celiac people that actually, it doesn't matter if it's cooked on a grill that has something that had gluten on it before. And then there's people like me who are really sensitive. So some people are like, oh no, we've had celiac people before come in and eat here and they've been fine. I'm like, no, it's not the same. Everybody's different.
Yeah.
So that's the hardest part.
So with celiac disease, you have to have the gene for it. You have to be eating gluten, and then there is a trigger, and we don't know what that is yet. For me, I was just in college, living my life, planning out my future, and one day I got really, really sick. And I was really sick for 3 years, and doctors couldn't figure out why, and I finally got the diagnosis of celiac disease. So I was grateful to know what was wrong. No one wants that diagnosis, but I was just glad to have an answer.
Sure.
Yeah.
And what has been the toughest lifestyle change for you now that you know that you have celiac disease?
Yeah, so having celiac disease, you have to plan out every meal. You have to make sure that every meal is gluten-free, not even just a tiny little crumb of gluten. So it's kind of taken away the spontaneity of life. It's like every moment has to be planned and thought out ahead of time, whereas before I could just kind of wing it or go with the flow. And so I think I've become kind of more like the type A planner, whereas I used to just be a little more free-going. So yeah, that's probably the thing that I miss most.
And is there one particular food that you wish you could still have?
If I could have anything, it would be like an ice cream sandwich from the gas station, like the really cheap ice cream sandwiches, because you can make them at home with the cookies and ice cream, and that's fancy and great, but I want like that just, that gas station cheap one, so yeah.